Well, welcome everyone. We are excited to be together today to highlight another topic related to being a human-centered leader. I am Mary Axelsen, the owner of WeMaax Consulting, and I'm going to take a minute so that we can have brief introductions. Then I'll describe what we're going to review today, and then we're about to have a very lively, interesting, and inspiring conversation. So
Mhm.
I will turn it over to my colleague, Amy Wood. And Amy, if you just want to give a brief introduction.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. Mary and I are business partners. We have our separate businesses. I'm a psychologist. She's a consultant, and we come together to spread the word about human-centered leadership, looking at leaders as whole people. And we'll be getting into that today.
Thank you.
So let's
Michelle?
meet our panel discussion guests.
Michelle?
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Allen. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at the MEMIC Group based in Portland, Maine, and really excited to be here with all of you today. Looking forward to exploring human-centered leadership a little bit further and how we anchor ourselves in it each day. So
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Punya?
Hi everyone, I'm Punya Mohapatra. I lead our technology scouting program and part of strategic innovation team at Nestle Purina. Looking forward to be part of this discussion today. Thanks everyone.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. All right. So our topic for today is full-on focus. And Amy and I spend a lot of time on this particular topic with leaders who have a desire to continue to be successful, but also to elevate their fulfillment in their lives. And one of the ways that they do that is by being full on focus, minimizing disruptions and distractions so that their energy and their time goes to the things that are most important. So as life and work speeds up and change is accelerating for us, we often feel disoriented, dizzy, reactive. I often ask myself, what day is it? What week is it? Especially, depending upon how intense my week has been or the amount of change that I'm experiencing. In addition, we're also constantly managing interruptions. And it actually takes us 27% more time to complete a task when an interruption comes in. We're more likely to make errors, and it also causes us to experience anxiety. So the goal of this conversation today is to explore strategies to help us quiet that internal storm while experiencing those disruptions, those distractions, accelerating the pace of our change. And so how do we do that? By slowing things down, acting with intention, and minimizing the interference. I mean, ultimately, the whole goal is to continue to have success, but not at the compromise of our joy and our fulfillment. So, Amy, I'll turn it over to you so that you can
Sure.
ask the panelists our first question.
Thanks, Mary. Great introduction. I think there's no shortage of great strategies, great tips out there for getting more balanced, getting more grounded and centered when there's just this overwhelm all around you. Everything is swirling about and you feel distracted. So I would love to hear first from our panelists, and then maybe Mary and I can share our favorite tips. Just what is the best way that you do that? And let's start with Michelle.
ooh, great question. I think it's an interesting thing to me when we talk about like what are the tips that we use to find balance. Every time someone asks me this question about balance, I see this picture in my head of like the Lady of Justice, right? Like holding her arms out, and everything is in perfect form. And the reality of it is that life actually isn't balanced. Life has harmony, it ebbs and it flows. There are times where our focus has to be on one particular topic more so than another. And so for me, it's really about in any given moment, anchoring myself in what is the impact I intend to have now. Who do I
Mm.
want to be now, and what is the impact that I want to have in this moment, and then how do I navigate that? And so really, for me, there's a lot around grounding myself in that in each moment and taking deep breaths and pausing to be able to see the forest for the trees and say, okay, now what? So that's a really important consideration for me, I think.
Yeah, I really love what you said there, Michelle, about how hard it is to achieve that perfect balance. And yet so many of us are trying to do that. And, Mary and I talk a lot about how there is no such thing as work-life balance, where we expect to have work on one side and our personal life on the other. And it's all integrated now, it's all intertwined. So it's even harder to achieve that sense of perfect balance. And we like to look at it like the goal is really to achieve an inner sense of balance, regardless of what's happening around us. And Michelle, you gave us some great ways to like the idea of having intention and asking what is my intention for this moment I'm in? What are my goals for right now? So what about you, Punya? What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed? How do you get centered?
Thank you for asking that. I am a mom of two young kids, so the stimulation is constant there and work as well. I think one of the things that I have learned over the years is being true to yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
And I have started saying that, hey, to my colleagues or friends, this is going to be a mom week for me. You're going to have more of mom and less of that punya from me professionally. And being true is hard, but you have to accept that that balance is not going to be even to what all of you just said. So that sense of being true to yourself is really important, that I can't be everything to everybody.
Yeah, I think great. And that is such a wonderful way to instantly, I think, get that sense of being anchored and grounded, is to get to the truth of who you are, and what's important to you in that moment. So Mary, what about you? What is your favorite way of getting balanced?
Yeah, so Punya and Michelle are bringing actually up some great ideas and tips, and it's also bringing me to is presence. And I realized at one point in my life that I was living my life based upon quantity, but really what I valued and what was important to me was quality. And so I had to do this personal inventory to say, okay, what are the things that are most important to me? How do I align that with my values? And as a result of that, what are some things that I need to start and stop doing? And that also included people that I had in my life. Michelle said like the power of now, and Punya said, and being true to yourself. And those two things were critically important to me, and I knew that I was operating in a way that wasn't aligned with that. The other thing is that I've changed my definition of success. And I always thought success was about achievement and doing things and getting things done. The more that I did, the more that I achieved, the more successful I am, the better I am. And I was doing that at the expense of presence. And so I changed my definition of success so that now it is presence is a form of achievement. So by changing from quantity to quality and changing my definition of success to include presence, it really gave me the ability to do some of the things that Michelle and Punya just described.
I love that. I also want to loop back on, Punya, one of the things that was really nice about what you said is there's this sense of like vulnerability and honesty in the moment of, hey, everyone in my circle, I've got these other things happening, and I need you to hold space for that for me in this moment. And every time we as leaders can do that, we actually teach others that it's okay to be in the present, and to care about quality over quantity, and to focus on the right things. It goes back to that whole conversation of like impact versus effort, right? What's my impact and how much effort am I putting into it? And how do I prioritize in this moment what matters most? So all really awesome points. This is great.
Yeah, and we're hitting on this fairy tale that we tell ourselves that Amy brought it up earlier about somehow I just need to have homework balance, right? Going back to those scales that you referred to, Michelle. And it's really not true. There is no homework balance. But there is the concept of being centered and putting my effort and my energy in the places that are most important to me and ensuring that I align myself with that. So for example, I am never going to have my week go at a certain pace. It's just not possible for me. So I have weeks that I am on screech. And that is how I operate, and that is how I flow through the week. And I give myself permission to be that person. And then there are other times that I slow myself down so that I can relax, I can rejuvenate, I can rest, I can get myself back, to that energy level that I want because I've now depleted myself from being on screech. So I'm just ebbing and flowing through that all the time. And that's the way that I operate that gives me fulfillment. So Punya, can you share with us, what do you think about this concept of work-life balance? Do you buy into it? And if you do, why or why not? And then what are some things that you do to help yourself stay centered?
I think for me, at the end of it, it's important to find the purpose of the work that we are doing. It's been a year for me at Nestle Purina, so I think, especially in a new organization, in a new role, you have to understand or ground yourself back and find that balance. What is the purpose? As long as you fulfill that purpose, you have ultimately achieved what you wanted to do. We often measure ourselves with the quantity of the work versus the quality. And it's like running at the pace. Have I slowed down? So we question ourselves quite a bit. It's not the imbalance as much as our inner guilt. Are we doing everything all good, given we have kids, we have families, and everything? So I think lately a lot of personal things happened in my life in the past 3 years, which even made me realize the essence that I can plan all day long, but not everything is going to happen. And that's then you lose your balance and you get stressed about it. So I think those events were life changing moments for me that made me realize that what's the ultimate purpose do I have? And in that moment, finding those things that are more important than others. It's not about picking and choosing. I think that's what our brain tells us when we prioritize one over the other. But the important thing is that we are actually doing a pretty good job, but we don't tell ourselves often enough, and we question that. I think that for me is the balance. If I have found the purpose, if I'm spending my energy on the right thing, I'll call it a balanced day. To me, honestly, at this point in my career, it's take it by the day. It's okay to plan, which I love to. I like to, but at the same time, it's okay for your plans to fail. It'll give you some anxiety, but then at the end of it, you are actually fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in the concept of agility and experimentation. So I want to go back to that before we go there, Michelle, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've already expressed it. I really think that this idea of work-life balance is to me it's irrelevant. And I think the context of it sets us up to instantly be in battle with ourselves over whether we're good enough or whether we've achieved perfection, or and so it's just yet another sort of construct that winds our minds up. And then we go to a place of, well, I'm not doing it right. I'm not focusing here enough. I'm not doing that enough. It's problematic for all of us, right? When we enter into that space, it's in that space that our mind is telling us that we're not capable, or, we're not doing our jobs well enough, or we're not being the best mom that we could be. We get all bound up in those thoughts. And when that happens, our stress response kicks in. And when our stress response kicks in, we're less capable of making solid decisions for ourselves, for our companies, for our children, right? And all of these things just start to swirl around. I think being able to acknowledge in the moment when that's happening, and being able to sort of create a little bit of liminal space between my thoughts and my actions, is where we gain the power back. And that's actually where real balance and centeredness comes from, right? It's that tiny little fraction of a second that we create in between those spinning thoughts and our very next step. And I often share with people when I'm in that moment, I will pause and people will hear me in the office say out loud, okay, Michelle, what's your very next step? What's like the very next thing you can do in this moment to just move yourself forward? And every time I do that, this new opportunity unfolds to be able to be like, oh, okay, I can be in action in this moment, or I can find that centeredness or that balance in this moment to be able to continue to move.
Yes, and I love the word pause because there's so much misinformation in our culture about what productivity is, and the definition we have in this country is that productivity is constantly working and focusing on the quantity, the output that you can look at, and really, the more productive you want to be, it really is dependent on your self-care, how often you do pause. Particularly, as you said, Michelle, to question thoughts that may be getting in your way, like those thoughts having to do with, I can't achieve this perfect balance in my life, therefore there's something wrong with me. There's so many ways we throw our energy away. And when we take a moment and think things through and get centered, even though we might look at that initially as, oh, we're not working, that's going to put us in a better position to get back to what we were doing and be more clear and be more on our game.
Yeah, that's great. I also want to invite the audience to put some comments in the chat. So what do you think about the fairy tale of home-work balance? Do you buy into it? Do you find yourself trying to be that? And what are some tips that you use to help yourself be more centered? That's great. We keep on going back in some form or fashion around presence and immediacy and what's in front of me in the moment. And I loved, Punya, that you brought up the fact that it's okay if you don't get it right, right? I tell myself all the time I get to restart my day anytime I want to, because it's my day. And then I go from there. So the other thing around productivity that Amy just brought up is this concept that we're supposed to be master multitaskers. Like somehow we're more productive when we're multitasking, right? How many job descriptions have we seen or job postings where multitasking is one of the criteria? But actually, there's a lot of research out there that says that it does the opposite, that single tasking is actually what elevates our performance and our impact and our productivity because we're typically doing a lot of work that requires deeper thinking. If we're doing something that's repetitive and simple, yeah, you can put them together and do multitasking. Amy always gives this really great example of maybe you're listening to an audiobook and you're folding laundry at the same time, right? You can multitask. But when we're doing the type of work that we're often doing in our lives, it does require our full attention. So, Punya, Michelle, do you have any ideas on ways that or tips that you put into place to help you single task and stay focused? I'll let either one of you jump in.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. It's an interesting topic of conversation. I'll start by saying that early in my career, I proudly wore the cloak of being a master multitasker. And I held great pride in being able to wear that suit. And so I laugh about it today because the reality of it is I actually don't think I was ever multitasking. I think I've been fortunate enough to be the type of person who is able to sort of compartmentalize my work into single pieces that I can sort of chip away at. Which gives me the satisfaction of feeling like there's this ability to sort of check off the tasks and to feel like I can do it rapidly. As I've become sort of more consciously aware of like what that is and what that looks like and how it plays out, the reality of it is that I employ a whole host of different strategies, whether it's sometimes I will time block on my calendar and say, actually, I'm reserving this half hour to focus solely on responding to emails that I find to be, like the easy responses, right? And then the next half hour I spend on the email responses that I might need to, I may need to add Claude AI for some assistance on, re-articulating my message or whatever it might be. But beyond that, there are some other things that that help me in being able to navigate sort of all of the things that come through. And one that's really important to me is that I try to start my day with the hardest thing first. Because if I can solve the hardest thing that looks like it's going to show up on my plate first, then like there's this sense of sort of confidence and anchoring that like, okay, now everything else the rest of today is just going to flow. And I find that for me to be just psychologically really helpful. And at the same time, there are days where I absolutely procrastinate and use the pressure of procrastination as a tool to be able to get great work done. So, there's no one size fits all. I think in all of it, what's really important is knowing what your own personal rhythms are, getting clear with yourself, like, when am I actually at my best? What's the work that lights me up versus the work that drains me? And how do I attempt to align my day? But circling back on what Punya had shared, like also acknowledging disruption happens all the time. And so what are the systems that we put in place so that when disruption happens, all of those other things that we were working on don't get lost in the shuffle, right? How do we have sort of a system of organization that helps to hold up a space for those things so that those things aren't caught up in our minds and creating more looping thoughts and stress? So
that's great.
Yeah.
What about you, Punya?
I'll build on Michelle's thing. I really like understanding your personal rhythm as a big thing, because for me, it's probably the opposite, in the sense I start my day with more of the emails and the communication where my personal urge is I have to respond back to them or I owe a response. So that something that I have learned from one of my coaches and have tried is called Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you have heard of it. It's like a 25-minute sprint where you time yourself and then you define the tasks you want to get done, whatever it may be. But then in that 25 minutes, you focus on getting that done. And for me, I think that has added so much value, because most important part of your day is gone just responding back to people. And that's where, if you have chunks of time focused, then you can get that out of the way, because honestly, that makes me feel anxious if I haven't responded back in some ways. My personal rhythm when it comes to harder tasks or preparing for more strategic meetings or so, I know I am best at the later part of the day when my kids are in bed, and I can focus really well on those creative aspects of certain things as well. So I try to carve that time, or on Fridays actually, where there are less meetings, where you can focus on getting those harder pieces done, which also gives me a sense of accomplishment wrapping the week, that, okay, I got it done and now I can enjoy my weekends. So I think those are ways, but then interruptions happen. You can get a call from the school saying, hey, you need to pick up your kid. At that point, you just can't do anything. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be frustrated. And I have been there and I face it as well. But as I said, don't forget to remind yourself that you are actually good at what you do. It's okay not to deliver it at that moment, but just be transparent and honest and communicate it. I think that's probably the key to it. But I never used to say no, but now I do when I can't. And I just say that, hey, I'll be able to give this to you by tomorrow. And I don't think the sky is going to fall in one day.
Yeah. So getting rid of this idea of perfection, I think, is so integral to not being too distracted. I know, as you said, Pinya, sometimes when you're thinking about something that you have to do that's big, that is going to take a lot out of you, it can cause interference in terms of the thoughts you're having and the anxiety. That's where I get distracted most. And I'm wondering about the rest of you. Michelle, what distracts you the most when you're working? What are those things?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
What distracts me the most when I'm working? It is, What distracts me the most is my own mind, right? It's fears about not doing something perfectly, about not having landed the plane the way that I intended to in the last conversation. You know, it might even be that I'm stuck in a space of planning what should I be working on next, and am I prioritizing things the right way, right? Those are the things that actually get in the way. It's not the real distractions. You know, I think back to COVID, and I think back to, you know, the organization that I was working with, and every disruption that came in like these waves, and it felt like this tsunami was like just constantly washing over you of new decisions that you had to make with no precedent on which to make them, and that you had to make them really quickly, and you still had to keep like the trains moving, like you had to keep the regular business moving forward. And there was something really interesting in that space about having to just simply let go, and to be, like Punya said, to just be okay with the fact that it isn't going to be perfect and you are going to make mistakes. And I just remember how many times I had to just stop and just breathe, in order to be able to navigate those disruptions. And they're real, but you know, it's such a great learning opportunity though, because coming out of that, there's very little that like actually scares me now in terms of like having to make decisions about the unknown, right? And how powerful is that?
That's really
how powerful is that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if that answered the question though, Amy.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think that is a great answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we begin to close out, Punya, would love to hear your thoughts on Amy's question, and then I'm going to go to our chat box and just share a few tips that we got from our audience.
I think the one thing that distracts me the more is probably the disruption of the workflow in general, like when you see the popping up of emails and then everything is urgent from everywhere, you tend to kind of go back into response mode. And that's where I think taking a deep breath, be like, okay, I'm in middle of something. I need to finish this before you can move on. But then with the world of technology, it's so hard to not be distracted. You have a watch, you have a phone, you have a laptop, and all these sources, which is probably natural, but then reminding yourself, I'm going to get this thing done, take a deep breath or walk out and then come back and sit and then go back with your routine.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
That tech stuff is really hard. You know, and I have actually, and you know, Mary and I had a conversation about this offline. You know, I got to a point a year ago where I actually removed social media. I don't participate in social media other than LinkedIn during the workday, and only during the workday. And then in addition to that, I turn off all alerts. Because there are times where emergencies can arise and I need to be found, and I have it set up in my phone so that those people for whom the emergencies are going to be happening and who might be reaching out to me can break through my non-alert system, right? You can create systems like that for yourself that are really valuable. And it creates just enough space so that you can say, no, I'm going to go to the WebEx chat when I've reserved time to go to the WebEx chat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to respond to emails when I've reserved time to respond to emails. And that I'm not actually like, the sky isn't falling. I'm not performing surgery in this moment. Like these are not life altering choices that I'm making. Those are really powerful tools. And it's scary to do it actually at first, but it's very freeing in the end.
It is. And I think it's a great way to get control. A lot of the distraction is from things we're trying to control that we can't control. And quite often we feel like our technology is controlling us, and it doesn't have to be that way. We're in charge of it, even though it's designed to addict us. We can say, no, we get to call the shots and use our technology judiciously to actually make us more focused.
It's great. Well, you got support from Debbie and Paul. They both said that they turn off their notifications and manage their technology when they want to focus. Punya, Jillian loves the Pomodoro technique. Jillian, I don't know if you want to give a quick shout out to the prioritization model that you use to help with tasks. Yeah.
Hi, am I unmuted? Yes. Hi. Yeah, so Mary sent it to me. I think it's called the Eisenhower chart, and it basically, you follow it, what's low priority, what's high priority, what's high urgency, what's low urgency, and it sort of gives you like a little bit of a flow chart on what really needs to be focused on immediately. And like Michelle mentioned, what is like, we're not performing surgery, what can be pushed to the following day or the day after that. And Mary's had to remind me of that multiple times because I have a tendency to treat everything like it's an emergency. I just have that nagging feeling like I have to get it done. And so you sort of have to learn to pivot and be like, you know what? This can get done tomorrow. Let me focus on these items today. And so she sent it to me, and if I can try, I'll try to put it in the chat box for you guys, but it's just like a little chart. That's just like, is this high priority? Is this high urgency? And if it's not, then go ahead and put it in a different box and let's go find the things that are high priority.
That's great. Thanks, Jillian.
Sure.
Debbie put a couple great tips out there as well about breaking bigger projects or initiatives down into smaller, more manageable steps. So that you're making progress. And then Paul also called out about how he uses his planning skills. So thank you so much for everyone for contributing and being here with us in this conversation. Thank you, Punya and Michelle, for all of your insights. Amy and I say every time we have this conversation, we find it so inspiring. And we walk away with so many tips that helps us to experience even greater fulfillment and joy in our lives.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and have a distraction-free afternoon if you can.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, everyone.
I
Thank you.
in the chat box, by the way, if you want to look. Okay, bye.